Hey, it's Vanessa, and welcome back to Born to Build the New. In today's episode, we are talking about when it's not working. So I know you've probably had that feeling or that experience before, and today we're going to unpack the larger energy around it and how to really work with the feeling and the experience of it not working. Now, before I get into the details, though, as always, love to introduce myself. I'm Vanessa Smith, the host of Born to Build the New, energy guide, identity seer, and really love to have the conversations around the paradigm shift that we're currently in and where you fit into this larger purpose role that you serve, how you use your unique gifts to build the new, and really what comes up along the journey of that, the messy middle of the mission. I come to this from my own perspective, which is doing my own purpose work, building towards the new paradigm, building the new, and then working with clients over the past 2 decades that are doing the same thing, watching these different patterns emerge. Now, before I get into the details of today's talk, I do want to share that recently I created some free resources for you. All you need to do is go to vasmith.com/free. But what they are all in service for you to better do your build. One of them is called the Grounding Guide, and it's about a different approach to grounding that you might not see out there that's specifically for those of us that are born to build the new. It's like foundational principles that we need to have locked into place so we can better do the build of what it is that we're here for. I also have one called Read the Energy, and energy is my wheelhouse. That is the way through which I move through the world. It is my foundational perspective in terms of how we can best navigate what's going on within us as well as what's happening around us, is to learn how to effectively read the energy. And so that is there as well. And then the last one is called Inside the Build. And it's about these 7 questions. There's more than 7 actually, but there's 7 main questions in there for you to really reflect on around your build. And I came up with these 7 questions at a time when I was feeling really stuck in my own build, and it wouldn't move. And you know how the generic advice is always go back to your why. What's your why? It's helpful, yes, but new paradigm builders need something a little bit more nuanced, specific, and expanded beyond the basic why. And that's what these questions did for me. And so inside the build, this free resource that I have for you, I offered these questions to you, but I also answered them and shared my experience just more organically, like I didn't plan out my answers. I just wanted to actually challenge myself to be more vulnerable and to share my experience of, okay, I am stuck in this moment. I'm going to answer this question and see what it feels like. Did this actually move the energy for me? And it did. And so there's a place for you within the resource, where the resource lives, for you to share your answer to those questions that I pose and connect with others who are doing the same as well. So go check that out again, vasmith.com/free. And with that, I'm going to jump into the topic today, which is when it's not working. When it's not working. So, when it's not working, it often feels all-encompassing, right? It's like you move in one direction and nothing seems to move. You back up 5 steps and then you move in another direction, and then it's also meeting a place of stuckness or feeling like you're stalled, like you are not gaining momentum or clarity or direction, like any of these pieces. And so being in that space when it's not working The challenge of that is that it can color your perspective of all the little things that you are doing that are working well. But this episode isn't really about highlighting, oh, just pay attention to the good stuff. That is helpful, absolutely. But it's more around unpacking, what does it actually mean when we say, ugh, it's not working? Because when we tell ourselves that, we're often backing ourselves into this corner. And even when we logically know the things that are going well, we can't appreciate them. Like our bodies don't relax enough to appreciate them, and our emotions might be in spin out mode because we're in reaction or resistance to things not working. And being able to not just retrain your brain to focus on the good stuff, but expand the context, give yourself the bigger picture of what it actually means when you say those words, like what is leading you to that assessment. What that does is it begins to release the grip that story has on you, that reality has on you. Because the bottom line is, at some point, you're going to have to change a strategy within what you're doing. Now, you can't do that unless you first assess. Assessment has to come before you start deciding that some specific solution is going to be your salvation. Because that tends to do is move you in a particular direction, but only to then be disappointed that that's not working either. So when we back up from the whole storyline of it's not working and kind of baiting ourselves with this dangling carrot of, if I just had a plan, or if I just changed my belief, or if I just cleared my energy, then things will click into place. And it's like, not that those aren't helpful, but let's get to the core of what's really going on so we can completely change the whole story of it's not working to begin with. Because the story of it's not working is a very, very old one, and oftentimes it's rooted directly into core wounding that you've been carrying around with you that you don't even realize, deep, deep underneath the surface. And it requires some grit and some presence, some grace, some grace, and some grounding, all of these pieces for you to actually look directly in the face of what it means when it's not working. This includes, first piece is looking at your expectations. Like, what does it mean to you when you say it's not working? How do you describe that? Like, specifically, what is it that's actually not working? Oftentimes, what you'll find is that it's connected to a larger frustration that you have in your life, and where you feel disempowered around changing it. And until you get to the root of whatever the story is, you're going to stay on that surface level trying to apply all of these different fix-it modes that don't get into what caused the assumption that it's not working in the first place. Now, it's not working is quite often also tied to right timing. So we're not only looking at your assumptions and the assessment of what's actually going on that isn't working, we're looking at your path, because when you're born to build the new, it's a journey. It doesn't happen overnight. It's not something that's an instant manifestation. So what exactly are you referring to? And where do you think you should be now that you aren't currently at? And when you realize, like, oh, I'm expecting to be in this certain place, but in actuality, based on what I have done towards this, it would literally not make any sense in any reality that I would be at this other place. And if I did by chance get delulu and end up in this other reality that I envision for myself, I don't think I actually have the capacity to hold that, to receive that. So there's much more nuance underneath the surface. And this is what energy does. Energy unpacks what's actually going on underneath the surface. What do you need to assess? What is it connected to? How does it fit into the larger, longer build of your path and the right timing of that? And on a very base level, what are you in resistance to in your life outside of your build? Because here's the funny thing that I say we, but no, I'm going to say we because I've seen it happen in multiple people that I've worked with as clients as well, is that we assume that there's something wrong with our build or that something's not working with our build when in fact it's a completely other area of our life altogether that is not the way that we want it to be. I've often found that when you're having a challenge in your relationship, in your health, in your overall finances, like something that's actually outside of the build of what you're here for, that the build takes the blame. We're like, oh, it's not working. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Is the build not working or is something else in your life not clicking into place in the way that you really need it to be? Because we forget that when we're building something, we're standing on a particular foundation. And that foundation is the rest of our life. What are we doing to take care of ourselves? What's in our environment that supports us or hinders us? Who is in our world and how do they interact with us? And what's the impact on us overall when we engage with them? All of these other factors that seem like they're outside of the build. Maybe you're even like especially tired, or maybe you're doing your build as a side project while you're working full time. And the build gets the blame, but it's actually these other areas of your life that just simply need tending to. They need acknowledgement and awareness around, and they need some tweaks. They need something to happen so you have a better supportive foundation to stand on as you're doing the build. And I'll admit to you, some years ago, I was of the mindset that, you need to get paid for your purpose work. I still believe this is true. I still stand by this. However, the journey to setting that up for yourself in a way that's actually sustainable and regenerative and continues to evolve and expand, right? Getting paid for your purpose work. Maybe you need to take a job while you're building your purpose work. Maybe your purpose work is something that is to be dedicated like a weekend to every other month instead of all of your energy into it. And there's other things for you to be doing while you're doing the build of your purpose work. Before, I was really against this. I was like, no, 100%. You're not committed enough and you're not doing the work hard enough. And like your energy needs to be dialed in a way that like it's all going to click into alignment. And because from an energetic perspective, things actually look a lot easier than how they feel when we're just focused on like the daily doings of being human. And I used to be, I'd say more aligned with that energetic perspective. Like, oh, I just need to shift my energy and then things will lock into place. And I think we've been sold that story so much that we forget what it's like to just be human and just be stuck. And so when we get stuck, we think, oh God, there must be something wrong with me. I must be doing something wrong. Why can't I just shift my energy? And then it all starts to move in the way that I know that it's meant to. And you can't forget about the energy when you're being human, but you can't forget about being human when you're focused on the energy. You need both. You need both. And the human part has to do with really assessing your reality. Now, I'm a fan of the unexpected. I prefer the better, more delightful unexpected than the opposite of that. And I do think that the absolutely magical things can happen. I'm a fan of the woo. I'm a fan of magical, unexpected synchronicities showing up. And at the same time, generally when we're moving through our daily reality of the to-do list and organizing, planning the back end piece of our build, deciding what we want the front end piece of our build to look like there's many different moving parts. And it requires a different kind of focus and a different kind of commitment, conviction, and concentration than floating around in the energy world does. Like I said, you do not want to forget about energy altogether, but you also want to make sure that the energy aspect of you, the energy perspective of you, is really woven in a supportive way with the human aspect of you. Because if you're in deep resistance to being stuck or to perpetually wondering why it's not working, then you'll continue to spin your wheels. And so part of the discovery process is knowing how to weave the energy and the human part together in a way that's actually nourishing for you, in a way that honors your natural rhythm, how energy works for you, what your unique design is, what your unique energetic mechanics are. So this is about knowing yourself in that way. It's also about stopping those stories and looking underneath the surface, looking energetically at what's actually the root behind me assuming that it's not working. That's a really important part to bring the energetic back into how you're assessing. And then there's just the practical piece of looking at the overall ecosystem of what it is that you're trying to build and discerning what are the gaps here. Because once you're able to, from a completely, more logical, mental, human perspective, decide what those gaps are, then you bring the energy into it. Because oftentimes we use energy as this escapism mechanism. Like, oh, it should be easy. Energy makes everything so simple. I'm just going to bend time and bend reality and be Delulu. And it's like, that's really fun and great and enjoy that. And you also need to do the actual tasks on the list. And so once you've decided where the gaps are, like what's actually happening so it's not working. And then when you know what those are, then you can bring the energy back into it and think like, what are some energetic, what's the word? I want to say infusions or something like that. Where can I infuse energy, like a more magical energy into the to-do list that I have or into this task at hand? Like, let's see. One of the things that I was doing, just to give you an example, is I was setting up a newsletter catchment sequencing type of thing. Like I didn't have any buttons on my, to subscribe to my newsletter list, right? So I actually like having a newsletter, but my newsletter has been pretty small for a long time and it doesn't move much. I mean, I enjoy the process of writing on it, but it hasn't been a real boost to my business, especially, from a financial perspective. And I kept going, oh, my circle's so small and it's not working. Nothing's working with my newsletter. And I kept looping on it. And I said, well, wait a minute, I need to back up here. And like, is there a place for somebody to sign up on my newsletter? Well, no. Is there a welcome email or some sort of sequence for them to sign up and receive once they're on my newsletter? No. Do I have a freebie or something that is actually useful? Because I really wanted to make something useful as a freebie, not just like a PDF that you forget about or info overload or anything like that. I really wanted it to be useful for people that are on the build, that with their purpose work for the paradigm shift, because that's who I serve. And I wanted it to be something that I could use also, because, you know, I'm human too. And I hit those points in my own build where I feel stuck or I feel like it's not working. So I wanted to create something that I can defer back to for myself and be like, oh, wow, that was super helpful. So that's what I did, right? So that's just logical assessment. But after I allowed myself to do that, like to drop below the story of it's not working and see this was one area where growth could happen, but I needed to set up like that internal architecture for it to do so. And I'm not a huge, I'm not a huge fan of following directions, but it's not really my strength. I'm more of, I like to create things. Like I like to initiate things. Like if someone said, go start this, then I'd be like, let's go. But if they said, okay, go figure out all the missing moving parts and follow these 10-step directions to put that in place, I'd be like, no, thank you. I'd rather just complain that it's not working. But we can only, what's it called? Like put up with so much of our own bullshit before we actually know that we need to make a change. And so we hit those points. We get tired of telling ourselves the same story of it's not working. And so as I realized that, right, I did this assessment. What I did to bring in the magicalness and the energy of the moment is, as I was following all the directions of my email newsletter platform, which, by the way, I use MailerLite. I switched recently. And I should do a whole episode on like all the different platforms I've tried, because I feel like Goldilocks. I would get on one platform. I'm like, oh God, it's driving me nuts. This isn't it. So anyway, as I was doing this, I just imagined that I was in a room, like that I was inviting people into my house, actually, and that I was having a potluck and a get together, and these were new people. It's the first time we met. So I'm having this whole fantasy in my head, this whole envisioning while I'm trying to follow these directions and set this up. And I'm imagining opening up the door and saying, hey, like, nice to meet you. Welcome to my house. Can I get you some tea? We've got some snacks over here on the table. Let me hang up your jacket. And then there's just this lively group of people that are engaged and interacting, and they're just hanging out on the couch and talking in the kitchen. And I love to gather people. I'm honestly, genuinely interested. And I swear, if you join my newsletter list, you will get a sequence, because I have now set it up, but you will also get a personal hello from me. Like literally, it's not an assistant. It's not an AI. It is me reaching out and saying, hi, nice to meet you. What are you up to in the world? Because I'm genuinely interested. I'm genuinely interested in people and in what they're building. I find it like a conversation that I always want to be a part of. I find it interesting, much more interesting than people that are complaining or, thinking that everything that we see in the mainstream narrative is actually true and we need to be in a fear state. Like, I'm not interested in those kinds of conversations. I want to know, what are you building? What are you creating? Who are you uniquely? And that makes this incredible tapestry. So that's what I did to bring in the energy. And there's, we could do it more cosmically too. I could imagine we're just in a room that's floating in the middle of the multiverse, right? Or on a specific island or something like that. You can play with it. It's like there's literally no limit to your imagination, to envisioning, to energy. We want to include it, but we need to bring both of those ways, the energetic way, and then this more logical assessment, corrective way to create the alignment that you're looking for. Because when you say it's not working, you're basically saying something's out of alignment here. So you need to assess what that is and correct it. Otherwise, you're going to keep experiencing the same things. It'll just be another version of something else not working. So you want to drop down beneath that and see what's actually going on. So that's what I have for you today in this episode on, quote, "It's not working." And would love to hear what you got out of it. Feel free at any point, go on over to my website, vasmith.com. There's a contact button. Hop in there. Let me know. Hey, I listened to this podcast. These were my thoughts. This is what it evoked for me. And get in touch. I'm a pretty down-to-earth person and just honestly interested. Would love to know how it landed. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll talk with you in the next episode. Take care.